Okay, so today I'm doing something a little bit different. I found this dead pronghorn out on the prairie and decided to bring the skull home to bleach it. And so this photo is a typical kill site you might run into when you're hiking. And the bones were somewhat spread out, but as time went on they just disappeared. So you got to grab that skull while you can, or the scavengers will just drag everything away. So to get this skull I had to actually break the neck of this pronghorn, and that was pretty easy. I just had to step on it, step on the vertebrae, snap it, and then I grabbed it and took it home. But if you ever run across a fresh kill and you want to do the same thing, you have to take a look around, because that predator that killed it may still be there, and they'll protect their kill. So just be careful. This was an older kill. This had been dead for probably a week or two, and it was pretty much picked clean, so I wasn't worried about it. But you got to make sure those predators are gone, because mountain lions and bears will protect their kill. So originally I was going to do a video on bleaching one skull, and it turned into 100. I found all kinds of skulls out here at Bluestem Prairie, and if you haven't seen my video on Bluestem Prairie, check it out. Part 2 will show you the bones I collected. And so this was my biggest batch of bones ever bleached. Took me 16 days to do all this, but I'm gonna run you through the process if you want to do this yourself, and you can see what the before and after looks like. So I'll leave a link to the Bluestem Prairie video if you want to look at that. The first part is on snakes I found, and the second part is on bones, mostly skulls, and a couple of old homesteads. So it's an interesting place, but you don't have to go to Bluestem Prairie to find bones. You can find them anywhere. But the easiest place by far is the prairie, just because there's no obstacles in the way. No trees to look around. You just have a nice flat field, and you just look for things that are white. So hope you enjoyed this video. It was pretty quick and easy, and I'll show you what all I found here, and hope you enjoy. Okay, so we'll start with the pronghorn skull, and as you can see I'm wearing gloves. That's because sometimes animals can spread diseases to humans. It's still got a lot of skin on it, so at this point I want to loosen that up. And so the first step is going to be to boil the skull. And so to do that, I'm adding baking soda, and that helps to loosen things up, degrease it. And you're supposed to add about a 1/4 cup per each gallon. And what you want is to find a container large enough to totally submerge the skull. So that's the skull, and this is his actual tail. So these pronghorns have really interesting fur. It's almost like steel wool, and these are holdovers from prehistoric age. The reason they're so fast is they used to be hunted by the North American cheetah. So the pronghorns survived, but the cheetahs didn't. We also used to have camels out here. So anyways, I'm gonna stick this into this container, but first I'm gonna get some hot water boiling, and I'm gonna add baking soda, and then we'll just let it sit and wait. Okay, so now it started raining, and I've moved the operation inside. By the way, you can use these buckets from Home Depot or Lowe's. These are good for submerging skulls. I like this one a little bit better. Don't have to waste so much baking soda, and that's what that is in there. And right now I'm just boiling the water. Mix this together. When you submerge this, you want it to be not quite boiling, just kind of simmering. Otherwise it might damage the skull. You don't want the teeth to fall out. Got some really cool teeth. This was a rare find. I'm very happy I found this. There's still some bugs working on it. Ideally you're supposed to scrape off the skin, but I'm going to skip that step this time and just loosen it up with some water. Worth it. I'm going to leave this vertebrae attached when I boil it. That'll just loosen it up. And what you're going to see is after about 30 to 60 minutes, there's going to be a layer of grease on the top. And that's a good sign. That's degreasing the bones. You want this totally sanitized by the time you're done. And we'll get to the next step next. Okay, so now I got some boiling water in there. I'm going to mix up some baking soda. It's supposed to be a 1/4 cup for every gallon, but it doesn't have to be exact. I put a little more than that in here. Alright, now we're ready to go. So I'm going to pop on some gloves. I'm sticking the skull in there, and I'm going to stick all these smaller prairie dog skulls in too. And normally it takes about half an hour to an hour before it loosens up, but in this case I'm going to let it sit all night because it is really, it's got a lot of flesh still on it. So this is what it looks like when you submerge it. It starts bubbling away, and you want to make sure that the skull is totally submerged. And it's going to get really greasy. It's going to smell bad, but we'll clean it later. Okay, so it's been soaking all night, and I was able to pull off this excess fur just by hand. Sometimes you would have to cut that off with a knife, but I was able to do it. It only took about 5 minutes, and the birds have been really going after these prairie dog skulls. So some of them are damaged, some are gone, but that's okay. These are a dime a dozen. This is the one that I was really interested in. So looks pretty good. His brain matter is all gone. The fur I'm just going to throw away, and this should bleach out really nice. You can see that the lower jaw has been detached, and when I'm done with this I'll super glue that back on. There's still some flesh left on the skull, so what I'm going to do is boil it one more time. You only want to do this twice because you'll damage the skull otherwise. So he's looking pretty good. I'm going to boil it just for about half an hour to an hour, and this time I'm going to add some dishwashing soap, and that just degreases it. And after that I'll fine tune it. I'll try to get some of this the last of the flesh off the bone, and after that we'll set it out in the sun, let it dry. Okay, so here we are at the second boiling. Remember, this is not actually boiling water. It's very hot, but it's you don't want it actually boiling. And this time I'm going to add some dish soap, and this is going to get real greasy again, but that's what you want to get rid of because that is what smells. If you wonder what this smells like, it's just like old grease. It doesn't smell like a dead animal, but you still don't want that smell. So I'm going to let this sit for at least an hour, and then we'll do the fine tuning. Okay, so let me show you where we're at. I took it out of the second bath, and I've been scraping it with some kitchen knives. Just want to have them as sharp as possible. And you can see I got most of the flesh off. It's tough. This is the most labor-intensive part, but pretty good job. I don't even mess with the gopher skulls. I don't care about that. But this is my trophy piece. So there is a alternative to scraping the skull. You can order beetles online, and they're made for this purpose. I mean, they're sold for this purpose. Taxidermists use them to clean skulls, and they work really well, but kind of expensive. They're about 50-60 bucks. So if you want to save the cost, you got to do it by hand. And next step is to leave it out for about 1 to 2 days, let it totally dry. So also that's going to give the bugs a chance to clean it up a bit more. So I'll get back to you in 2 days. Okay, so now it's been drying for 2 days, and we're ready for the last step. I'm going to bleach it. Now what you don't want to use is household bleach. What I'm using is hydrogen peroxide, and I'm using the cheap stuff. You can get that from any supermarket or Rexall, whatever kind of drugstore is in your neighborhood. This is 3% solution, which is pretty weak. I'm going to estimate that you would need a gallon to do these many bones, and that costs probably 20 bucks. If you don't have 20 bucks, you can water it down a bit. It's just going to take a little longer. So let me show you a couple of interesting skulls that I found out there, because I went out there again. This I think is a badger, and I can't really give it a positive ID because it's damaged. The teeth are gone, but those things that look like horns, those are actually the eye sockets. And here's another odd one. That may be a smaller badger, or it could be a rabbit. I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna take all this junk and we're gonna fill this up with peroxide, and it's gonna sit for at least 24 hours. I like to leave it longer than that. It's gonna depend on how long you want the how white you want these bones to be. So I'll show you what it looks like in a couple days. So this one is damaged, but I can still use this. This is something I can put out in a cactus garden or whatever, but this is a deer. It's not a pronghorn. But this was a fairly fresh kill, and so I've taken off some of the tissue. I'm going to probably boil this one more time, but what I noticed is that his brain is still in there, so I'll show you how to get rid of that. I've boiled this once already, and this is going to be just like it's going to look like poop. So all you got to do is just take these needle nose pliers, reach in there and pull it out. I'm not even going to show you what it looks like. It's really gross, but that's how you do it. And after that, I'm going to boil it one more time, and then I'm going to leave it. This one I'm going to leave for the insects to clean up. Okay, here's my second batch of prairie dog skulls, but most of them are in pretty poor shape, so I'll probably keep 1 or 2 at the most, and the rest will go to a nature center. But this is the one that I was mostly interested in. This is a badger, and he had the nose attached. I took that off. His brain is gone. He's missing the lower jaw, but still a really cool skull. And also the birds pecked a hole in the skull, but this is a really rare find. It's really cool. So I haven't done anything to these yet. So they're fresh out of the dirt, and so I'll have to wash these, and I'll put them through 2 boilings with baking soda. So I'm almost done with the first batch, and I'll show you what that looks like soon. Okay, here's some older skulls that I did. Actually, there's one that I did not do. This is professionally done. This is a really nice job. I bought this on eBay, and yeah, this guy does it professionally. And I have a specific way that I mount the deer skulls. I buy these little brackets. These mount on the wall, and I'll show you how it goes. It's on the back of the skull. There's a hole right here, and when that skull is mounted, he'll stick out. So as you walk under him, you'll be able to see the teeth. It's a really cool mount, and they're cheap. They're like $7. So here's a bighorn skull. I found this down in San Gabriel Canyon. This was the skeleton was inside of a mine, and it was killed by a mountain lion. And I was lucky enough to find this. It was about 200 or 300 feet outside the mine, because for some reason mountain lions and other animals, they just love to take that skull with them. And so that was sitting out in the wilderness for probably a year, maybe two. And so it's a little more pitted than the other ones, but I like it. It was there was blood stained when I got it, but it bleached out real nice. And for this one, I used that industrial strength peroxide, so it's a little whiter than the other ones, but it came out nice. Over here is a coyote skull. This was the toughest one that I ever did because the animal was so desiccated, which means that he was mummified basically, and I had to chop the head off. It was either that or leave it where it was and hope that it would be there when I came back, and I didn't want to do that. So this is not going to mount on a wall. This just sits on a shelf, and it has the full jaw. It's a really nice piece. So what I did, I took a wine cork because it wouldn't stand up on its own. So now that goes up on a shelf, and it's a real nice display. This one is just a shed. This is these fall off of deer all the time, and most people leave them natural. I wanted to see what it would look like if I bleached it. I like it. It came out good. Nothing special about that. And then this one was my great aunt used to own a ranch in West Covina, and this sat in her garden for probably 40 years, and it was a mess. It was had hornets' nests in both the eye sockets. It was just encrusted with dirt, and so I washed it off and ran it through some bleach, and it came out great. It's a little bit pitted. The bones, you can see that they're a little bit brittle. Okay, so I'm being a little careful today with my camera because I have snake venom on the lens, and I got a cut on my finger. I had a prairie rattlesnake biting my camera last night. So, but on this one, all I did was string some wire through it, and that's going to hang straight down on the wall. So that's what I usually do. I just make a makeshift hanger. And so there's a couple that I've done in the past. I'm not a professional or anything like that, but I'm getting better at it. Okay, today is the grand finale, and this is the biggest batch of skulls I've ever done, and they took a lot longer than I thought. I had to do 2 batches, and I had them each in there for about 8 days, and some of them have been sitting in the dirt for a long time and they're still not white. That can be fixed, but let me show you what I got. So all these small ones are prairie dog skulls, and I've probably thrown away at least this many. I'm going to throw away some more because something like this is not going to do much for me. That's just pecked to pieces by birds. So what I'm going to do with these is piece them back together. And for example, this is a good one. This is eye sockets are still intact and everything looks good. So I'm going to take jawbone. This is like a two-part jawbone. I'm going to find two that fit the skull, and I'm going to super glue them onto the bottom. And what I want in a good oops, okay, well that just happened. Okay, this fell out, and that is a prairie dog tooth. So that is, let me find one. That is this part. Okay, so a lot of those fell out, and I'll have to glue them back in. And so I'll take two of those jaws that match the size of the skull and glue them back in place. And I have a big pile of these teeth. And let me find one that still has the teeth. They almost all fall out because they're only held in by a gum material, but that's what the teeth look like. They go way back into the skull. And then in some of the skulls, I have a third part. And this falls out sometimes. This is the connector to the vertebrae, and it goes right here. So that's what this is. So a lot of these are in bad shape, and some will get thrown away. Like this one is just no good to me. It's pecked to pieces. And this is another one. But some of the okay ones I'll send to a nature center. Some of the other ones I'll put in a little snake enclosure, and a few I'll Frankenstein back together and put them on display. So that's it for the prairie dogs. And I probably threw away at least this many. There's just prairie dog skulls everywhere. So now we get to something I call the UWAs. These are unidentified walking objects. And they're broken up. They're weird. I haven't identified what animal they came from, but I'm keeping them because I think they look cool. So, no idea what these are. Now we get to this one. This is, I believe, a badger, and this one came out really well. Nice and white. And it's never going to get totally white. It's going to be sort of a bone color, and that's what you want. Again, you don't want to ever soak these in chlorine and bleach. It'll just ruin the skull altogether. But that one turned out good. Okay, now we have this 100-year-old cow bone. And that's been sitting in the dirt for probably 100 years. I tried to bleach it, and it was just falling apart, so I took it out, and this is okay. It's going to just go into the garden, and I kind of like the weathered look, so that's going to stay as is. It's kind of, brown. It's okay. Not sure why I brought this home, but there's about 1,000 of these. These are, I believe, deer legs. Part of a deer leg. Make some drumsticks out of it. Okay, this is a pronghorn tail, and that came off the pronghorn that I found at the beginning. And I'll show you that skull in a minute. And what else we have here? Okay, I got two of these things. These are really weird. These are pronghorn horns, and they're not made out of bone. They're made out of I don't remember the name of the material. It's the same stuff hair is made of, keratin or something. But yeah, these fall off, and they just go back to dust eventually. So yeah, unlike deers, pronghorns have horns, and they do fall off. They keep a stumpy bone on the skull, but yeah, that's what that is. Okay, now we have some snake skins, and most of these are in bad shape because the snakes will rub up against branches to get these off, and they just fall apart. But I have one that's in excellent condition, and this came off a snake that was sitting 5 feet from it, so it was still fresh when I got it. It's perfect condition. And this is where the head was, so that's a keeper. And then we have a feather of some sort. That's probably a prairie falcon. If I were in California, I'd say it's a Cooper's hawk, but not sure about that. Okay, let's move over to the big skulls. But before we get to the big skulls, here's this spur. This is like the coolest thing I ever found. And it's all cleaned up, perfect condition, and man, I'll never find one of these again. Okay, so here's the pronghorn, and he's still a little bit on the yellow side. That's because there's a little bit of tissue left, and also here you'll notice that there's still some cartilage left, especially in the nasal cavity. And I can just snip that off with some scissors. But this one overall came out really nice. And it almost looks like a camel skull. And next to it is a deer skull. And this one was damaged. So you can see the coyotes bit off the nose. But that's okay. That's going to be in my garden. And it's kind of a cool piece. I don't have the bottom jaw, but you can see how different these two skulls are. Deer has a much wider skull, has the horn attachments, or the antlers, I should say. And his teeth are much bigger than the pronghorn's teeth. You can see, let's see. Yeah, you can see that there's a big difference between those two skulls. So one's a deer and one's a pronghorn. I call them pronghorns. Other people call them antelopes, but they're not true antelopes, so that's my name. And so when you find a skull that's this complete, you can buy stands on eBay or Amazon, professional stands to display this. So that one came out really cool. I really like that one. And the board underneath it came off of the old homestead. That's going to be a shelf. That might actually be a shelf to display these skulls. So found a lot of cool stuff out there. So for the skulls that are still yellowish, like this one, all I have to do is just soak it a little longer in hydrogen peroxide, and that'll get white. It takes a while because that's a watered down solution. But yeah, that's all you got to do. And so there you go. Bleach skulls. There are other ways to do this, but this has worked for me, so that is the final product. And so now all these skulls are sterile. There's no bacteria, no viruses, no disease that you can catch, and so they're safe to handle. And there's one more step that you can do if you want to. Some people like to add a coat of polyurethane. It just preserves them. I guess it's good for outdoor display. I like to leave them natural, but that's one thing that you can do depending on your preference. And if there's any that are not to your liking, you can stick them back in the peroxide, get them a little whiter, and that's about it. So if you want to see where these came from, check out my Bluestem Prairie video, part 2. And Prairie's a really interesting place. A lot of dead animals. So I hope you enjoyed this, and good luck with your own skull bleaching. We'll see you next time. Adios.